My name's Evan Parker. I'm 30, and for those who don't know me, I'm a dancer. A dancer who once owned the stage, not figuratively. But now I'm dealing with the fallout from an injury that pulled me out of the spotlight and into a cold silence filled with uncertainty. I live in a city that mixes old and new. A Lisbon different from what everyone imagines. Because here the weight of the streets carries stories of people who, like me, fought to escape their own shadows. Right now, I'm swamped in debt that seems to multiply as my career tries to reinvent itself. Each morning starts with a sliver of hope and a dose of fear. Living alone in a small apartment, where the old furniture creaks softly when I make a decision. I deal with the emptiness of hours once filled by my body moving to music. Being so dependent on my physical body, and now feeling it set limits I didn't want to accept, really gets you down. That's why I've learned to close myself off from the world and hold on to the pieces of what I have left. A passion for dance, and the desire to start over. The truth? The pain of not knowing if I'll ever get back to it weighs more than any injured muscle. It's hard to trust. But what I didn't expect was for life's demands to take the form of a man named Caleb. If you're curious to find out what happens when a broken dancer meets a debt collector with a dark past, hit like and subscribe. The story's full of surprises, and it's not over yet. My apartment usually wakes up slowly with me. Sunlight streams through the worn curtains, casting golden patches on the wooden floor. Sometimes, I close my eyes just to try and remember the sound of my steps without the weight of pain. Around here, it smells like old dust mixed with a faint scent of sweat from the workouts I still insist on doing, even with the shadow of my injury hanging over me. The walls witness my routine. Slow movements, stretches, and the quiet chant of music accompanying me in that makeshift studio in the living room. Surrounded by water bottles, towels, and meds, I live one day at a time, where moments of struggle blend with the silence of lonely nights. I don't live far from downtown, but this little bubble where my world breathes is a layer of isolation. The street where the building is has the occasional car noise and the distant echo of conversations, but nothing close to the intensity of the life I had before. What you hear here is just the beginning. The full stories, unfiltered and with all the details you can imagine, are available now. Check the link in the description right now. My routine starts early and ends late. I get up, make a strong cup of coffee, the only thing I can still hold steady, and slowly stretch my body. I spend hours trying to get the best I can out of what's left of me. Between recovery sessions, I send out resumes, count pennies to pay bills, and avoid thinking about what I should be doing. At night, when the city sleeps, I sit by the open window, letting the fresh air in to remind me that the world outside continues even without my active participation. I try never to forget that I'm more than my limitations. Life, though, has a strange habit of knocking on your door when you least expect it. It was on one of those gray afternoons, almost a shadow moving across the clock, that he showed up. Caleb Morgan, a name that became branded on me like an indelible mark. At first, he seemed like just another face in the building hallway, but his firm gaze and controlled voice revealed a man who was there to collect more than money. He introduced himself with a calm that immediately made me uncomfortable. "Do you know Derek Hayes?" he asked. No beating around the bush. I did. That was the loan shark I owed, and who kept a heavy hand on everything I had. Caleb, 38, athletic build, and an air that mixed the experience of someone who'd seen a lot with the weariness of someone carrying more, got straight to the point. His eyes, dark, almost stone-like, missed nothing. "You need to start paying, or we'll have to take action," he said, in a short phrase with no room for negotiation. Between us, the conversation flowed with dense tension. I tried to explain that my injury had knocked me down, that it wasn't easy, but he showed no compassion. Something about him, though, drew my attention. Maybe it was the contained intensity I saw in someone used to dealing with danger daily. We were opposites. I, a broken artist trying to salvage scraps of a dream. He, a man walking the thin line between right and wrong, carrying a past he barely wanted to show. Still, amidst so much difference, there was a quiet space where our lives began to touch. The following days were a strange puzzle where our coexistence unfolded between collection sessions and moments that strayed from the expected routine. In one of these encounters, while I was fixing the burnt-out light in my studio, Caleb showed up unannounced. With surprising fearlessness, he put his hand on the pendant light, fixing it with the quickness of someone who knows what they're doing. I stood there, watching him do something for me. A small gesture, but full of meaning. Afterward, he cooked me a simple meal, a dish of that home-cooked food that comforts and doesn't demand perfection. We sat at the small wooden table, and between bites and sips of cheap wine, we talked about things we each avoided saying out loud. I discovered that behind that debt collector, a human side existed. Moments where the tough shell seemed to soften and reveal someone who yearned for something beyond the danger he was trapped in. And little by little, I found myself reaching out for that unexpected connection. There were no promises, just sincere exchanges, glances that kept the spark of the unexpected alive, and a silent comfort in knowing that, at that moment, no one was alone. But good days never come without their tough challenges. I carried a fear, an internal voice that screamed not to give in. The past warned me. They come to destroy dreams. My physical condition turned my routine into a battlefield. The pain, exhaustion, and loneliness created an invisible wall that kept me from fully opening up. Caleb was fighting his own war. Derek's name loomed like a constant shadow over his life, threatening to undo any plan to escape that reality. I saw in his eyes moments of conflict between the duty of the past and the desire to break free, perhaps even to change. There were days when the tension between us grew, a delicate balance where fear, distrust, and desire mixed like fire and water. The interference of external threats and internal doubts made it clear that nothing would be easy. Even so, deep down, a spark of hope grew. Perhaps, against all odds, we could find a way to rewrite this life story, together. That day was different from the start, but I only truly realized it at dusk. The studio was lit in a way that blended the orange of twilight with the warm glow of the lamps Caleb himself had adjusted. The small furniture, the table, the chairs, seemed to come alive with the shadows on the walls, making the atmosphere intimate, almost secret. We sat there, after an improvised dinner with ingredients bought together at the nearby market, talking about things no one had ever asked me before. Caleb spoke little, but when he did, he went deep. His normal calm voice would change tone and become low, almost whispering. I referred to those words as a melody that unsettled and soothed me at the same time. We walked through memories and fears unhurriedly, until a stillness formed. We were just two men sharing the space, not a debt collector and a debt. It was a heavy but light moment, as if the hours folded in on themselves and the world outside didn't exist. He took my hand. It wasn't quick or aggressive, just a touch that seemed to ask if I was there, if I wanted to be there. I felt his skin warm and firm, and my body, previously aching and closed off, responded. That contact sparked a slow electrical current running through every inch of my arm. It wasn't a sudden movement. He slid his fingers over my hand, leaving a trail of warmth and promise. His back was slightly arched, his chest rising and falling with breaths that became deeper, heavier, and the synchronicity of our pulses created a silent dance between silence and expectation. The atmosphere gained subtle aromas, the mix of his light woody scent with the smell of coffee still resting in the cup. The sound of the wind hitting the windows was a distant sound, almost muffled by the intensity that took over. Suddenly, all senses opened to what words couldn't express. I was attentive to every movement, every hesitation, every approach. Caleb's touch, even brief, found paths on my skin I didn't even know were sensitive. They ran along my forearms, went up to my neck, and clung to the simplest details of my skin, bringing nerves to the surface as if awakening something dormant. There was a moment when our breaths synced up, as if they were two halves of the same melody trying to find each other in the middle of a song. That instant was so charged it seemed to stretch time, as if the clock slowed down so we could feel every second intensely, as if months, maybe years of waiting, condensed into that touch. We weren't in a hurry, though the desire was tangible, pulsing strong in our eyes that met in a silent exchange. Caleb's fingers, now more confident, sought small refuges on my body, the curve of my neck, the line of my shoulders, each touch amplifying the sensation of vulnerability and comfort. I wanted to grasp that moment, hold the hours, draw with his touch every line of my body, not just the exterior, but what was still hurt, what was afraid to show itself. His close body conveyed a security I hadn't found in anyone else for a long time. The cold in my hands was replaced by a growing warmth, a living flame that fed on that gradual, silent contact, and made everything inside tremble. The muffled sound of our breathing formed a soundscape that filled the space with intensity. Every gesture was perfectionist. No one rushed anything, as if sketching a canvas with the care of someone who knows its art. That night, before any explicit gesture, was a choreography made of slow touches and deep glances, where the electrical tension between us grew with sophistication. Our bodies spoke a language that words didn't yet dare to touch, and that was the beam of light guiding me to new ground, a path where I could finally be seen without fear. As the night progressed and whispered gestures gave way to a firmer, more necessary touch, the small studio became the stage for this dance that wasn't made of steps, but of a deep and intense encounter. Caleb drew closer, as if slowly uncovering a map, every line and every night I had kept hidden in my body. His hands carefully explored delicate territories, unhurried, guided by the accelerated breath that filled the air. His touches were like brushstrokes painting an unknown landscape, soft, then firm, but always respecting the texture of my skin, the reactions they would awaken. It was as if each encounter, each contact, was a discovery and an affirmation, not just of desire, but of what all that repressed time longed to feel. His fingers slid like warm creek water, tracing areas that held secrets, precisely drawing the curve of my neck, running along the soft curve of my shoulders to the skin of my chest. The warmth of his gestures contrasted with the cold that sometimes hid inside me, and that night, seemed to melt from within. The aroma crackled in the air, a mix of warm skin and his subtle woody scent, while the yellowish light transformed the room into a painting where shadows and light played on our skin. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full, worthy, full of echoes that only those who surrender understand. Caleb seemed to know my body intuitively, as if he had rehearsed every movement before the encounter. But at the same time, there was the spontaneity of something new, surprising, that broke down barriers delicately. Our hands met in furtive touches, exploring the anatomy of desire that wasn't just physical, but emotional. Two men exploring territories where one can only go with trust. He slowly lowered his hand, pulling me into an embrace where I felt my pulse quicken, my heart beating faster, and my mind surrendering to the moment, far from the pain and distance that had seemed so definitive before. His skin against mine was the clearest sign that we could exist together in that world of uncertainties. The bond built over weeks of tension, pressure, and small concessions was consummated at that moment with unexpected delicacy and a power no words could describe. The climax of that encounter wasn't just the communion of skins and bodies, but the deep meeting of souls that, even wounded, sought healing in each other. Caleb wasn't just the debt collector who arrived threatening what I had. He was now the presence that stirred everything I tried to keep safe. Every touch, every sigh, every glance became a silent chorus of a poem they would only begin to sing from then on, regardless of the pain the past carried. After the intensity of the night gave way to the serenity of dawn, we remained there, lying side by side, feeling the paused rhythm of our breathing connect our bodies. The silence was comfortable, that silence that only allows itself when the surrender is true. I felt for the first time in a long time that I wasn't alone, that someone, finally, had decided to stay not out of obligation, pressure, or fear, but because they wanted to feel everything with me, in the lights and shadows. Although the past hadn't disappeared, Derek was still a constant threat looming over our heads. That moment gave a different weight to my existence. I knew our lives wouldn't remain intact, but at least the pain could be shared and the struggle divided. There, in that moment, I realized that more than recovering my body, I needed to heal my soul. And Caleb, with his heavy past, his secrets, and his choices, was the bridge in that crossing. From then on, something fragile yet strong was born. The silent promise that, no matter what came, we would face it together. That encounter had changed the dynamic. He was no longer just the collector and I the debtor. We had become something more complex, vulnerable, and powerful. Beyond touch, words began to emerge. More open conversations, sharing of fears and dreams. I understood that despite life throwing us against each other violently, the choice to stay, or to go, would be ours. Free. I discovered that being seen, and wanting to truly see someone, was the missing spark to rekindle what I thought was lost. And Caleb, who had arrived carrying threats and shadows, also became the light that promised a possible future. Even if there were dangers nearby, I felt a quiet courage for the first time. A firm will to try and build, more than save what was left, to reinvent a life where love, however impossible it seemed, could create hinges to open new doors. And there, in the tranquility that followed the storm of the night, I was certain, we are not just the product of our past, but of the strength we have to choose what will come. The sun was already beginning to fill the studio when Caleb slowly got up, as if afraid to scare away what remained of a good dream. I saw the lines of his face in the dim light, his eyes attentive and his expression filled with something that mixed doubt and a desire to stay. For a few seconds, we only heard the sound of the street waking up outside, a distant dog, the whisper of tires on the pavement, the indistinct voices of neighbors. I felt a knot in my stomach, like that moment in the past when someone leaves and the house feels bigger, empty. The silence between us was no longer discomfort. It was a pause full of possibilities. He stood there, looking at my face, as if trying to memorize the details, and I did the same. I was afraid that suddenly everything would fall apart. My mind raced through all those possible scenarios, planning the weight of a goodbye alone. I laughed inwardly at the absurdity of it, after all that, me wanting to run away from new feelings myself. Caleb was the first to break the silence. His voice no longer had the same harshness as before. Now it carried respect, almost tenderness. I can't promise you everything will be easy. I won't pretend there's no danger hanging over us. You know who I'm dealing with. I looked at him. I don't want anything easy, Caleb. I just want to know if I have something real to hold on to. For a moment, I felt he would pull away, that he would turn around and disappear like so many other people had done in my life. But he didn't. He knelt beside me, held my hand, squeezed it tight. It was there, in the warmth of that palm, that I felt the first decision being formed, invisible, but present. If I could choose, I'd stay here. Not just to take care of things, but because I found a home in you that I never had anywhere else, he said, staring at the floor, like someone revealing a dangerous secret. Those words hung between us, resonating like old bells. I observed the man in front of me. He was no longer just the debt collector tied to Derek's debts. He was someone who had built a refuge with us, even if temporary. But Derek's shadow wasn't imagined. Sooner or later, he would step onto this ground, threaten to destroy everything, and it wouldn't be easy to escape. Are you sure? If you stay, there's no going back, you know. Derek doesn't forgive. Caleb nodded. I know, but there's something I never had the courage to do. Choose for myself, not for others. For the first time, I want to be part of something real. I want to see what happens, even if we have to fight together. The fear still existed, but I realized it no longer dominated everything. Between one threat and another, hope remained. I got up from the chair and stood face to face with him. The hug we shared was in no rush. It was long, tight, mixed with the woody scent of the night before and the feeling of belonging. I felt my eyes sting. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. Caleb took a deep breath, looked into my eyes and said softly, "No matter what comes from outside, I promise we're going to build a life of our own. Even if it's small, hidden behind these walls. We're going to open that studio together. Photography, dance, a fresh start. Do you trust that?" I gave a half smile, holding back tears. I just know you make me want to try. And it's been a long time since I felt that. In that moment, we were no longer just victims of the world. We were accomplices in what was to come. A call from Eli, Caleb's colleague, interrupted our moment. "Derek's suspicious, Caleb. He knows you didn't come back yesterday and wants answers." Fear changed the tone of everything for a second. We exchanged quick glances, aware that time would be short from now on. "We have to act," Caleb whispered. "Today, there's no more running." For the first time, I didn't want to escape. My courage was real because it was shared. It didn't matter if from now on there would be war or peace. I knew that together we were more than the sum of our pains. We went to the window, watching the light flood the neighborhood, and decided together. Our farewell would actually be a choice to stay. After so long surviving alone, I finally wanted to fight with someone by my side. Caleb picked up his jacket, turned one last time, and smiled. "I'll take care of this, Evan. When I get back, we'll start our story for real." I watched him leave, my heart pounding, but without heaviness. Because deep down, I knew it wasn't goodbye. It was the beginning of whatever was to come, together or not. My hope mixed with courage, and the small flame lit the night before now illuminated everything in me. The day passed slowly, as if time hung by a fragile thread. I relived every conversation, every touch, every silent promise made in the heat of our encounter. I looked at the living room, the messy mattress, his scent that still lingered. Margaret, my grandmother, always said, "After a new beginning, no one can fit back into their old loneliness." Caleb would come back. He had to come back. And not just for me, for himself, for all the new things we were weaving together. Perhaps some part of my soul already knew. Life, in that instant, had changed its rhythm. When the door finally closed behind Caleb, I had time, a rare thing in my life, to silence all the external voices and look inside. It was almost as scary as facing Derek on the street. In the silence of the house, everything seemed sharper. The memories of the night, the tension in the gestures, the bravery of someone who still fears the future but doesn't stop facing it. I thought about the pain of the injury, the daily effort to get back on my feet, the bills piling up in the drawer, and the truth that no tragedy explains. No one chooses where love should enter. It simply invades. My body was tired, but I'd never felt more alive. In the window's reflection, I saw someone who wasn't ashamed of their own scars, who knew the difference between loneliness and solitude, who rediscovered, with Caleb, a courage far beyond their own limits. Fear turned into fuel. I was no longer adrift. I had found an anchor point, albeit temporary, in the heart of that debt collector who became a shelter. The debt, once a prison, turned into a bond, something that united two men marked by lack and a desire for belonging. Where there was threat, now there was promise. Every aura of danger around us just cast more light on the choice to fight and build. I thought about all the times I was afraid to risk my own happiness, to show my vulnerability. The night before had taught me what no dance coach or psychologist could. There's no more beautiful movement than trusting your own feelings and sharing them with another person. I know nothing will be simple from now on. Derek is a real danger, but no longer invincible. With honest colleagues, unexpected friends, Eli, who delivered the message without judgment, and especially with Caleb by my side, the barriers, finally, seemed like surmountable challenges. The dance and photography studio was more than a plan. It was a living portrait of every possible fresh start. It wasn't just about overcoming debts or escaping the past unscathed, but about reclaiming what truly mattered. Dancing again, now looking into the eyes of someone who believes alongside me, showing that trauma can turn into art and that every repressed desire can be freedom. My grandmother's image appeared, soft like an old piece of advice. Choose to be whole, my child, even if imperfect. With Caleb, I discovered that you don't have to fit into molds or run from fear at all costs. Being vulnerable is also having strength. Loving, even in failure, is already a start to victory. I walked to the mirror, looking honestly into my own eyes. I saw the Evan who had been beaten by life, fallen, but now had a real reason to keep trying. I grabbed a paper and, still in my pajamas, wrote a list of my next steps: train, reclaim the studio, report Derek, and start over, alongside someone. And I smiled, guilt-free. I was filled with a genuine desire to ask everyone that this shouldn't stay just in the video, or just in dreams. I thought time would help, but I realized, deciding to fight for something changes everything. If Caleb could leave a past of threats, I can overcome an injured body. If two lost souls found each other, there's hope for anyone. And now, I don't know if we'll have peace every day, but I know that, together, we'll be stronger. My story with Caleb has just begun, and it could be the start of a new cycle, one of those that change everything without asking permission. If you felt any echo of your own story in each step of this narrative, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also, share your experiences. No one needs to live isolated from themselves. In the next stories, I promise to reveal what happens when we fight to the end for the chance to start over. What you hear here is just the beginning. The full stories, unfiltered and with all the details you can imagine, are available now. Check the link in the description right now. Thanks for trusting my perspective, for dancing with me through this journey. I'll see you on the other side, where mistakes and successes intertwine. And may love, whatever its form, continue to appear where no one expects it.